Hello and welcome to Flame On. I am Brian. I'm your host for the weekly Rainbow Interview Spotlight Series, or something like that, whatever we call it.
You know,
I come back and try to tweak the title. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
the Bifrost chat.
Oh, I might have to steal that. Thank you. So,
Please do.
Special guest, a dear friend, a fellow Seattleite, although he beat me here first. And queer comics creator, writer, and publisher extraordinaire. In fact, if you look up queer comics in a dictionary, you better see a link to Mr. Zan Christensen, founder of Northwest Press and many other things. So Zan, welcome, not for the first time, certainly hopefully not for the last time, to Flame On.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So, I kind of gave you a little bit of an intro, though, but I will talk real quick. Northwest Press, if you have not heard of it for real, I will put a link up in the on the video here. Please go check out what all Northwest has to offer. There's so many amazing queer titles still available, and if they are not in stock, the good news is a lot of it is digital and on Comixology, and that's how I actually got a fair amount of mine. Is because I have less books these days. Though I don't know if my mic is obscuring it here. You can see my my little selections that I put up.
Look at that.
Some of my favorites, actually, we'll talk about. But Zan, tell me about Northwest Press. Tell me when it started, why it started, sort of what brought you into the world of queer comics publishing, and how it all began.
Well, kind of like I think a lot of people got interested in queer and trans spaces in comics. It was because of a lack. There was a lack of like an established publisher that people could go to publish queer comics work. Not that a lot of the independent places weren't, generally friendly, but it's kind of this weird middle space where the indie places don't necessarily do comics or queer comics, and the queer publishers don't do comics at all. So it was kind of like reinventing the wheel. Every time someone wanted to publish something, they would have to, either self-publish or find someone who was kind of a not that great a fit or not that knowledgeable about what they were trying to do, either in the comic side or the queer side. And so a friend of mine was publishing a book. He'd been working on it for years and years and years. This is John Macy.
Oh.
And he had been working on Teleny and Camille, and we had been friends through volunteering with Prism Comics over the years. And I'd met him he'd been volunteering at the Alternative Press Expo in San Francisco. And I'm not sure exactly where was the first time we first met, but I've been seeing the progress of his progress on this graphic novel for like 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And so when he finally was ready to publish it, he couldn't find anybody to publish it. And so he just self-published it, did a small run of them. And obviously self-publishing is wonderful, and I don't begrudge anybody self-publishing, but a lot of people who are writers and who are artists are not print. They're not print proofers. They don't have experience working with printers. They don't know as much about specs, or they don't know about promotion or distribution or any number of things. And I knew about them somewhat from my work with Prism, because we would do the Prism Comics Guide and distribute that through Diamond, and go through printers and do all that work. And my background was in advertising and printing, and so I kind of had a lot of those skills. And so I thought, well, why don't I just publish books so that I can publish John's book? And it was so quick. It was so fast. It was like I gave myself a business plan for my birthday that year in April 2010. And then it was so fast that I hadn't even really settled on a name for the company. And so I didn't know if it was going to be Northwest Comics or Northwest Press. And so the first book says Northwest Comics, northwestcomics.com, which does, I think, still redirect to the right place. But that's how fresh it was. It was just like, let's do this. And so I decided in April, and we had the books at Comic-Con in July. So it was really fast.
Wow. Like
Yeah.
that's insane and so aggressive. And at the same time, it all comes together when it needs to. You get that deadline, you get those events lined up, and you get the thing done. But it is still like anyone who's ever started a small business or done nonprofit work, you can appreciate how much that has to be lined up for this stuff to get going and to be successful or to even be functional, let's just say.
Well, I think bravery and ignorance are
Yes.
really helpful. Because if you don't
Absolutely.
know what's coming, you can pretty much take on any task.
Oh, 100%, especially in those worlds. But so Northwest Press, since that time, I don't even have a figure, but it's got to be in the 100+ range,
No,
right? No?
it's several dozen. It's like
Okay.
3. Let me see here. I think it's about oh gosh, like maybe 20 books.
But that's
20
books as in
print books.
collective, like titles or like issues?
That's 20 bound, 20 like books with spines.
Okay.
And then there's, a smattering of comics. We tried to do some ongoing series, which was hard to do because I can't print a little flimsy disposable comic.
So
I'm
hard.
physically incapable, and so all the comics are really gorgeous and they cost a lot of money.
Oh, I have a few and they are beautiful, but you're right.
They're
It's
wonderful. And I went
yeah.
for that like Ultimate Spider-Man stiff glossy cover thing. And anyway, so that plus the digital books did do a lot of digital re-releases for people. And I think that's, a lot of the things that I started Northwest Press to do, like to provide a publishing house for folks who didn't have a publisher, and to provide, digital publishing services. People didn't have that. A lot of that stuff is kind of, people are caught up, and there's more of a landscape of self-service that's really actually very good, like in terms of Kickstarter and Comixology and things like that. So a lot of the things that I set out to do, I feel like I accomplished them, and I'm like, I don't have to run for a second term. So I feel less pressure to do, a really aggressive release schedule or whatever. I do, get a lot of submissions, and I look at them, and not a lot of them are kind of ready for prime time, or they're not quite a good fit. But I'm just kind of like waiting to do something that I really want to do. I've been writing a lot more of my own stuff lately. So I feel no pressure. I feel like I can do whatever I want whenever I want to.
Well, you're absolutely right. It is your publisher, to say the least. But I was going to ask you, like, in the world that we are in now in 2021, with queer comics getting really good footholds, and in some cases, like getting kind of prioritized at major publishers, even graphic novels and visual type works. Like, do you see Northwest Press having to fill that need anymore? Like you said, a lot of the print on demand or the digital publishing has kind of been taken care of, and then now these big publishers are getting into the game. Like, where does Northwest Press fit in that space?
Well, I feel like I can pretty much have it be whatever I want it to be. So I'm planning to do some prose releases, because we did do 2 short story collections of queer supervillain stories, and that was just a total fluke. I'm actually in one of them, the first one, the Lavender Menace, and
Oh yes,
that just happened because we were going to be published by, I think it was Dream Spinner Press, but for some reason or another that didn't happen, and I thought, well, who do I know who's a publisher? And just published it. And so just did all the design, and got Joe Phillips, commissioned him to do the cover. And so I have a history of publishing a little bit of prose work, but I'd kind of like to just do whatever I feel like doing whenever I feel like doing it. So the idea of doing some prose things, working with some voiceover talent to do some audiobooks, maybe even do an audio serial, like an audio
audio drama,
like an audio book as a serial podcast. So I got some ideas.
That's exciting. I love that you have. I mean, again, sort of the nature of the market and the way things are driven, but you're also at this point now where you're like, yeah, I can curate whatever I think is going to be cool and fits within the Northwest Press brand, even if it's not just comics or just queer. Like, you know, it still probably has some of that DNA, but not necessarily all of it, right? So I love that. We have a couple comments real quick. I did want to say hello to our dear friend, and I can never say his name, so you're going to have to help me somewhere figure out Samwell. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, but
Samwell?
Samwell. I apologize if I am just butchering it.
Cheers to you.
Yeah, cheers. But I also love, we were talking before the recording started. Media Meltdown, our dear friends and cohorts down in the San Francisco Bay Area. That is their logo. If you can see it on there, it is a delightful little trippy smiley face, and it's one of their logos, I should say. So yes, I love seeing that pop up occasionally. We also have our dear friend Dave, our
Dave.
Northwest Press celebrated queer noir writer Dave Abersole, who also has been on the show many times from Dash fame, and with a very successful Kickstarter for Tommy Dakota, which is going to be coming out here in the next gosh, I forgot the release date for that, but that is very exciting. Also, I pulled this off my shelf real quick because I love John Macy's work, and Fearful Hunter is one of, I think, my favorites, and one of the first Northwest Press books I believe I got. I don't remember if I ordered it from you, found it in the store. I don't remember, but either way, I love it. It's a great book.
I love his work. He's actually working on some new stuff. He's not imminent or anything, but he's been sharing with me a little bit of the book he's working on developing. And it's it's ambitious. It's complicated. It's really well written. I'm very excited about it, but he's got other things in the fire, other irons in the fire. So he's not. It's not happening anytime soon. But I'm happy that he's still doing some work. So.
Oh, but so because I remember asking you about him, and if he was still going to be doing any new work, and yes, so I'm so thrilled. We also had Andy Sam or Ann Samwell. Either way, I guess is good. Question for you. Is there a 2021 collection of Pride postcards? Because last year, it was a amazing project that you guys pulled together.
It was a lot of fun.
And I got to send out a bunch of them. So I are there still, let's ask it this way. I don't believe you're doing a new 2021 line of them, are you?
No.
Yeah. Are there still any 2021s left that people could order?
Yes, actually, yes, there are. And I probably should tell people about that more. But yes, we do have the full sets, and it's 6 cards in the pack. And if I can remember all the artists off the top of my head, there's Sina Grace, Bishak Som, John Jennison, Diego Gomez, and Tana Ford. So there's 5 artists and 6 cards because Bishak did 2. And they're wonderful. That was me collaborating with Joey Stern, and we kind of got together. He had this idea to do this postcards, and so we kind of pooled our might and got a bunch of artists together, did a Kickstarter that was very lean. It was mostly just about giving some illustration work to people during the pandemic quarantine and no in-person Pride. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. And this year he contacted me and said, hey, should we do it again? And by then it was like coming up on we'd maybe have a month to do it or something like that. And I'm like, I just can't. It's been a really odd year for everybody. But I've had this urge to kind of like to say no, which I don't usually have the urge to do. But yeah, I felt like recharging and kind of like getting back into the world has been my priority, and so I love doing it, and I love the work that came out of that project. But no new cards this year. There are ones from the last one though.
Yeah, I had the link up, but if you do want to buy the cards from last year, they are available. You can check the link out down there, or just go to northwestpress.com and it's right on the front page. So it's really easy to find, and you can send them yourself. You can buy a 6-pack and then just send them yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we talked a little bit before the recording started about just like the world, things we want to see in the world, adventures we want to have. What are you most excited about post-pandemic? Like you kind of touched on a little bit, but they tell me, like, you know, what is that next thing? It doesn't have to be a project. It could just be, like you said, hanging out. But like what is that thing you're really excited about right now?
I'm really excited about different media, I guess. I got back into doing, pardon me, this wine is really good. I'm getting into podcasting again. Dave Ebersole, who commented a little earlier, hi Dave. We were chatting about this and that, about websites, about podcasts, and I mentioned that I had done all these podcasts like 15 years ago, a long time ago. And then I also tried to do podcasts about 4 years ago, just before the presidential election. And for some reason, I lost all my motivation to do anything after 2016. But he kind of said, well, I would love to hear some of those. So I got in, I got into my old files, and I found, all my old materials and old images, and went through and redid all the graphics and made them all high res. And then I went through and I signed up on the Apple Podcast and got the stream going, and I got the new software, and then I had to redo the website, and then I had to do this and had to do that. And in the process of all that, I found an old interview with Abby Denson, who did Tough Love, High School Confidential, and is now doing the City Sweet Tooth books. We did an interview on her very first book tour. And so I'd never edited it and put it out as an episode. So I did that as the very last Super Fag Radio episode. And that was the show from 2005 to 06. And then for Ink, I started to do Ink as a series of kind of like intended to be like Comic-Con panels as a podcast episode. So things that would maybe not be a promotional thing or as dated as quickly, but just be about a topic, so that people could, like, if they wanted to know about autobiocomics or about academic history of comics, things like that, they could find an episode of Ink and listen to it and actually find some use in it. And so I decided to respond to somebody who was asking about Kickstarter support by pledging support and then saying, do you want to do an interview? And then just, doing it over the weekend, putting it up at midnight on Monday morning, and just reviving that on kind of without any fanfare, really.
Well, no, I mean,
I'm excited about that kind of thing, like taking advantage of the tools that we have, doing things that are more about connecting people to other people, either myself with an interview subject, but also that person with readers, or that person with other creators who are curious about what they're doing. That kind of stuff has always been the most important part of the work that I've done. And so I'm very interested in thinking outside the box in terms of the media that I'm working in, and this, the types of work that I'm going to spotlight or talk about, as long as it's about creative people and connecting those creative people to people who want to, hear good stories, read good stories.
It's I mean, it's very much in my wheelhouse, and the spirit of which I serve as well.
Really?
No, well, Zan, this is why I think we've always had a lot in common. We both, I think, are creative, but we both champion others more than ourselves. And it's not because we're trying to be like selfless or whatever. It's because we genuinely love and want to share the light that other people have to the world. Like, that's always been the whole point of Flame On, and bad pun not intended, but like, it's to just get the word out about things that are really interesting and that you may have not have heard of. And so this series and yours is absolutely dedicated to that. And you've been so helpful for me, connecting me with certain interview subjects and just finding out about cool things over the many years that I've been following. So, I mean, I love this. I love more of this. And the Ink series, I put a link down here in the video, but if you have not already seen, we actually, you interviewed Fernando Velez of Class 6, who I got to interview, probably last year at this point, about his wonderful queer superhero comic that's so inclusive and gets really crazy, deep end, mythological, biblical, like in ways you never would have expected. So when he popped up, and you had such a great little video set up, I mean, it's a great episode. It's a podcast in that it is a digestible sort of audio, but it's also video. And I loved it. I loved seeing the two of you there. I was a little jealous because I was like, man, I wish I could do that. But you know, we're still getting fully vaccinated here in this household. So it's
luckily we were able to. We thought about doing it as a Zoom thing, but I'm like, if we're vaccinated, and Fauci said that it was totally okay. So we're going to blame him if something goes awry. But yeah, that was so fun, and it was so quick. We got along like a house on fire right away. Just totally. We were chatting. We were talking about so many things, and I had to stop us because we hadn't started recording yet. And that was the kind of day it was. It was really wonderful. And then we did a little, you know, like you said, a little video recording afterward. Yeah, it was just so much fun. And so I want to do more. You know, I'd love talking to people. I think that one of the things that Dave said to me that I think is very sweet of him was he was saying that that I was kind of a natural at talking to people about their work.
Absolutely.
And that's because of practice. Like, I've been doing lots of moderation of panels over the years, and the way I think of it is my job is to be interested and to be curious, and to make them feel like they can talk to me and not to worry about anybody else. I mean, until the Q&A, of course, but it's not like you're on stage and you're answering questions. It's we're having a conversation and everybody's invited to, you know, to sit around and listen. So that's the kind of vibe I hope to give to the interviews going forward too.
I think you do. I think you've got to, like you said, years of practice. It pays off, right? You know, you show up, you do the thing, and you're going to get better at it just by necessity. But no, you're always so easy to talk to, and I know this is going to be great. I'm so happy you're doing more. I did want to show Class 6 because, again, if you have not heard of it, which, you know, you could have missed it, it's a thing. These are Kickstarter funded and then produced. And they, like Zan, you were saying, even their single issues that they put out are so really nice, like very glossy, very just well put together. Like
in the olden days, they would have called that prestige format.
Right. And now it's just like everyone, because no one's working in newsprint and whatever that flimsy paper stock they used for the covers before. But yeah, no, so Fernando and his whole group has been doing this for some time. In fact, we were saying before we started, we were talking about BendCon, and the last BendCon was what, like 6-7 years ago? Is that about right?
It feels like forever, but it was probably like 2015 or 14.
Okay, so close, yeah.
Yeah.
Evidently, right? They vended at.
They were there, and I didn't know. But I was actually. He was talking about how he met Ted Abenheim from Prism Comics there, and I'm like, I probably was there. I was probably right. I was probably in the background when you were talking to him. So it's a small world. It's and I don't mind that. I think that's really, really great in a lot of ways, because it, you know, we're all doing things that are niche and that are maybe don't have as a built-in huge audience as a lot of the things that you would find in a comic shop. And I think that we're all much more powerful together. But I just like the fact that we're all in it together. You know, we're all in the same boat. We all want everybody else to succeed. You know, not everybody. Some people can be a little rare. But for the most part, even those people also still want everybody to succeed. Because we're, you know, if somebody else's queer comic takes off, then people are going to want more. They're going to want more. And, you know, when somebody else succeeds, we'll succeed too.
It has absolutely been my philosophy that a rising tide, yada, 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 right? But I will say that there are people in our niche in the world that we are in who have not always felt that way. And it's, I'm glad to hear that because I feel like that is definitely the case. So I want to go back to BendCon because BendCon is something I always wanted to go to and never made it until it died. And I had Dave Davenport, who was also a big part of BendCon. I had him on about, probably several months ago now too. And we were talking a little bit about the sort of the rise and sort of demise or, whatever, cessation of BendCon. So tell me about your involvement in it. Tell me about how, were you there from the very beginning?
Yep. So the first show was at an empty Mr. S. Leathers store in Silver Lake, I believe. It was across from a bar. I can't remember what the name of the bar was, but I do remember somebody leaving the show so they could go off to the bathrooms at the bar and like mess around and then come back to buy more comics. And I'm like, finally, a comic show for me. And it was great. It was very much like the 80s movies where the kids put on a show to save the orphanage or whatever, like very scrappy, very homegrown, not amateurish, but definitely very DIY. And it was free, and it was just like a one-day thing. I helped to do some promo videos for it, obviously talked to everybody about it, helped out with design in later years, helped out with doing the booklets and things like that. But it was like this little special social moment that was so unique. It's like you don't know. I think the thing that I said the most about it was that you don't notice the level of guardedness that you might have around like a non-queer specific comic space. You don't necessarily notice the feeling that you feel there until you don't have it. And so being at BendCon, it was being in a place where you knew that everyone there, like what you had to find out was whether they like superheroes or fantasy more. Like that was it. It wasn't about whether they're cool with men kissing or whether they, were okay with trans characters or whatever. It was just, that was the baseline, that everyone was there because they wanted to be there and they wanted to be supporting this community. And it just felt so good. It just felt so refreshing and positive and uplifting. And Sean, who put on the show, was the primary force behind it, was so just dedicated to it, and polished every detail. And it was too good. It was too good to last for too long, but it was great. It was like, it'll be like San Francisco in the 70s, and people talk about like before everything before things took a turn, like there was this moment where everything was alive and glittering and exciting, and or like clubs in New York that you can't go to, like, oh, the Limelight, I used to go dancing at the Limelight. It's kind of like that for me, in that it was this moment in time that was great, and it's gone, but we can still do other things. But yeah, it was great. I liked it. In case you haven't noticed, I liked it.
It makes me so sad that I missed it. And
we can make our own thing. We can do something new. And also, it was at a time when that kind of space was needed so much more, I think, than maybe it is now. Like there's a lot more, especially like in Seattle. Like we were talking about this, that Seattle is kind of like, it's a big queer city anyway. Like whether or not it's gay or trans or bi or whatever. It might be straight and queer. Like everything is queer, just because that's kind of how the city is. So you have that baseline of people are generally going to be cool with you, no matter who you are.
It has meant so much to me living here, even though it's been in the pandemic. So I haven't been able to like really be in the city very often. But like we went down this weekend to is it Dog Pound Leathers, I think. and which is a great store. I actually want to talk to them more because they actually vend or have like a space for queer fiction. In fact, I've seen other works probably from Northwest Press, but
We had
also
some
from
books
other.
there for a while, but it's tough. But people mostly want to buy poppers. They don't want to buy comics.
Well, no. Here's the thing.
Okay.
You cannot say, and you know this, and
they want to clean their old VHS cassettes.
I was reminded of this in the store. You don't say the word, but what's funny is they have
they ran out of those. What I meant was those things that snap and pull the thing. Party poppers.
They sell jalapeno poppers, is what.
But they don't carry those anymore.
No. But what's funny is they actually have a thing from Southwest, I guess, and I don't know if this is to be believed, but they have a printout right on the glass case where it's like Southwest had somebody ask them, "Do you have a problem if we bring these things in our carry-on?" And it's funny because they said poppers, and Southwest is like, we have no problem if you would like to bring video head cleaner or room deodorizers, but you should know the lingo. But like it was a great response from a major corporation. I love seeing those occasions.
Yeah, but like, get with it. Come on, don't make us. It's like when you're an RA in college. Like if I can smell the pot, you're gonna get in trouble. Just don't let me smell the pot.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God, you're just giving me sensory memories of the Parliament House in Orlando, where the joke was every time you'd go there, all you'd smell is cum and poppers. But anyway,
Sean from BendCon, we met because I was an RA at the dorm that he was going to. He was in school in Chicago.
Get out. That is so fun. I love how the world does that and brings these people into your life, and it's I love it. But what I was getting to at going to the city this weekend is just being in the city, being here in Seattle, and seeing and feeling the inclusion and cultural just heterogeneity, and also the acceptance. It is transformative, and so I really hope. And I'll just go one step further. The whole West Coast, honestly, because I've been through a bunch of these. I was San Diego a couple weeks ago, and like it is just such a joy, for sure. But yeah, no, I really hope in the future that BendCon or something similar arises again, because I feel like even if it's not here, it's somewhere. Like I just want to have that. We got FlameCon on the East Coast and a couple other smaller shows, and they got their thing. But like we need it. We need more here. I mean, it is our duty to do that.
And Fernando and I talked a little bit about because they're relatively new. He and his partner are relatively new to the area too, just in the last few months actually. And so, he wants to, I think I was the first visitor to their place over in Redmond. I'm like, oh, wow.
Oh, so, okay.
But, we talked a little bit about like, why don't we, do something? Like, why don't we put on some kind of like a little free event, just because we can. So I'm going to kick that around a bit. I worked on the queer nerdy comics and pop culture pretty at Pride the last several years. So when it was in person, and that was a lot of fun. And it was like a pretty low cost, really high traffic, great group of people. And it was it felt very, very comfortable and homegrown. And for being in the middle of giant corporate Pride, it felt very homegrown. So yeah, I mean, there's no reason that we can't make our own event. That's how BendCon was. It was really just a bunch of people saying, let's get together and do it. There was an opportunity, there was a space, let's do it. So I'm going to be walking into lots of spaces and looking around like, oh yeah.
Well, that is one of the things post-pandemic, and I haven't explored this directly yet, but just that there are probably more spaces available than there were pre-pandemic, unfortunately, or not. Like I feel like that at least should help find, something that's affordable, but also, good enough.
Well, I would love to have it be at a place that needs traffic. So I was thinking like a bar or a cafe or something where it could be easily converted, or like a place like a bar where they don't have people there during the day most of the time, and like having it start earlier in the day than they would normally open, have it be a free event, but have it be there so you can get a glass of wine and walk around the show or whatever.
I got a place for you. We got to check this out. And by the way, if you're not in Seattle, I apologize because this is totally turning into a Seattle podcast, but that's okay. This is my show. Have you been to the High Line downtown? I think it's Capitol Hill. It's a vegan death metal bar.
The High Line. I remember there was a High Line that we used to go to, but it moved a couple times. I'm not sure if it's the same place you're thinking of.
I have not been since the pandemic, but my boyfriend and I, it wasn't when we moved here, but before we moved here, we came out and scoped out areas and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It is a vegan death metal bar. It is fantastic. The food is amazing. And I say that not being a full vegan, I'm kind of sort of a weird veggie pescatarian, whatever the hell. I don't know. Yeah. But I'm just telling you, they have a full concert space and then their bar. So I got to see if they're still open. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
Well, that sounds great. I mean, but that's the kind of thing. Like I wanted to have it be a place that, you know, has the space and wants people to come back, right. You know, and then give them business. Like I have them make money off of people buying drinks and buying snacks and whatever. Like that's exactly the kind of thing that I want to maybe do. So.
Do you and again, this is totally self-serving, but also because I'm interested. So the Seattle area has some really cool comic shops. Mm-hmm. Do you have any that you have worked with Northwest Press or that you think are really good at supporting queer comics that you recommend?
Well, Phoenix Comics and Games on Capitol Hill is a good one. Queer-owned business. And they're not like they're definitely more. They're focused on like the whole comics experience. They're not a queer comic shop, but they do lots of community events, or they had in the past. They do like Magic the Gathering tournaments, and they do meetups and things. Outsider Comics in Ballard, I think. They're really great, and it's kind of like it's a geek boutique as well. So they have like cool fashions with like superhero prints and stuff like that.
Cool.
They're wonderful. You think there's in Tacoma. There. Oh gosh, what was the name? I don't know. It's hard. I haven't been out to comic shops.
No. It's okay. Let me put in a plug for my LCS now, and I say my LCS even though I don't go like I used to. I mean, I used to go every Wednesday and all that. So around the corner from me in Shoreline is Arcane Comics. And what impressed me about them is I go in that store, and this is not this month. This is like, it was probably late April, maybe early May. I don't remember exactly. There is a whole wall of queer comics. And our good friend Ed Luce, among many others, were prominently featured on this, you know, section of their display. And it meant so much because I hadn't been to an LCS in a while. My own home LCS in Orlando, a comic shop, you know, they had queer comics. Actually, I was part of a queer comic a comic anthology that had queer stories in it. But you know, they would put out things when they could. We had Dan Parent there once to talk about Kevin Keller, and you know, they were very, very good to work with. But like seeing that in a store, it meant so much to me just to see queer comics proudly displayed and available. And I know that's a challenge even still with all the amazing queer products coming out. LCSs, depending on the clientele they're going for, may or may not bother to even stock or find these. So you know, having just, hey, Northwest Press still existing, you know, even in that space, if you did ever want to go back into the world of well, not Diamond anymore, whatever's post Diamond, I guess.
Well, we're still with Diamond, but I had to say Diamond has been really great to us because they kept us on as a publisher well beyond what the numbers would have indicated or what the numbers would have prompted, because they knew that we were kind of a gateway for a lot of people to get into shops, you know. So I am very, very, very happy with them in that way, at least. I mean, it's hard when you're a small publisher to do wholesale at that. Like it's like 60% off cover price. Like that's really hard when you're printing, you know, low runs or small runs. But as a way to, you know, get the books out there, to kind of like as a promotional way to get the books out there as well. They've been really great, actually. So,
well, I've heard good things from retailers. I think the current landscape is just so dynamic, let's just say, with all the different
it's
players.
evolving.
Yeah, it's evolving to say the least. And a lot of it is, I feel, still like the death throes of the print industry in certain respects. And so there's a lot of their stuff that, we don't have to get into. But that's great. No, I'm really excited to explore more of the Seattle comics scene, because I had always heard amazing things. It's it's like I don't know if we have quite like Isotope, that level of whatever here, but certainly if you have familiar with San Francisco based Isotope, like they're a huge supporter of comics in general, but also queer comics specifically.
I wish that every city had an Isotope Comics, because James at Isotope is the most amazing, tireless, dedicated lover of the medium, and so full of ideas and energy and friendliness. Like, he's the best. So if you're lucky enough to go to San Francisco, you have to stop in there. But maybe if you're a comic shop, maybe go and like take notes.
No, absolutely.
Because he's doing it right.
They very early on figured out a bit more of that boutique, loungy sort of model. And a comic shop in Orlando also, not early, but not too long ago. Gosh, it's been probably almost 10 years. Kind of tried to evolve the comic shop away from the dusty, long box, very, unapproachable sort of angle, and they added a bar
kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's so crucial to stores that are healthy and survive. I was just in San Diego, and one of my favorite stores there closed, and I'm assuming in part because of the pandemic, but also in part because they didn't quite get to that point to find that work. But so yeah, I am remiss, because I wanted to explore more of your work, and I know that you are still in between, like you're doing a lot of cool new things, but like you've written a fair amount of comics yourself, and I'm kind of curious, like with those experiences and what you did, but even before Northwest, like what are you particularly proud of that's still out there?
Well, I really liked the Mama Tits Saves the World book. That was a lot of fun. But that was, it's kind of like when you hear people talk about movie projects that they were on, or either directing or acting in, and they talk about like, it was such a fun project to make. That's kind of the way most of the projects that I've worked on are to me. Like, I remember, like for Mark Aviakis with Mark Brill, I remember going to 24-hour Comic Day with him, and basically staying with him as we basically did the first issue of that book, like the first sketch of it almost. And that's the part of it that I really loved. There's a lot of work after that, but I liked the Mama Tits book. I liked, like I said, I had a story in the Prose Lavender Menace anthology of queer supervillain stories. And I have some stuff that I'm writing of my own that's not illustrated, or it's not comics per se, that I'm still trying to figure out where that's going to live. It's getting pretty close to where I have to decide what I'm going to do with it. But it's a long form thing. I've been reading a lot more, and I've been kind of excited about novels and excited about like novellas and things like that. So there's definitely, again, like queer comic stuff arises because of a need. And there's the quality of queer genre fiction is hit or miss. Like, there's lots of stuff out there, but a lot of it is kind of like lots of sensual touching and stuff, but not like story, not like characters. Yeah. And so, there's something that I would like to read that's not always there. And when I find it, I get really excited about it. So I'd love to try something like that. I'd love to like make start a trilogy or something like that. I'd love to venture into that space.
With it's funny you touched on the whole sensual touching slash let's say queer or not even just queer but erotic.
It's like MM, not gay, but MM.
What do you, in terms of the genres that you've encountered, and sort of the, like, where is that balance? If you want if you want to do the HBO equivalent series, like, you know, you want to have a little sexy time, but it doesn't have to be just about the sexy time. It can be the story with sexy time. Like, where do you find is a good, you know, balance in that? Like, you know, from stuff that you have either Northwest Press has published, or your own preference, like where is that fine line? How do you find that, do you think?
I know that there is a line. I just don't know where it is.
So it's like obscenity kind of deal.
Yeah, maybe. But I'm bad at restraint, I guess. Like I'm very sex positive. I'm very pro sex. I think that we would do a lot better to demystify and destigmatize a lot of the things around sex that we do, just for our own mental health and our society's health. So I tend to lean more toward the pushing boundaries and being more explicit. But the truth is that doesn't work so well unless you want to live in that space entirely. Like, if there's lots of great people, like I subscribe on Patreon to a comic called Santa Francis, which I met through a queer comics work in progress group that I'm in sometimes. And, you know, that's a web comic with explicit, you know, wieners and buns doing things. And he's doing it himself, so he doesn't really have to worry about like what the final audience is or publisher or whatever. Like, he's just doing it and making money from it. But unless you're doing stuff that's really firmly planted in an erotic space, it's hard because people are not used to frankness. People are not used to explicit stuff. And it just kind of limits your reach in terms of distribution now, because with Apple and Google and whatever other places that they have these days, Comixology Comixology has been very good about this, not doing this. But Apple will just basically say, no, we won't carry your book because it has wieners and buns in it and they're doing things. And I don't understand that, because they're cool with movies with, you know, things happening in them. They're cool with lots of people getting their heads blown off. But they don't want to see people in love and expressing it and, you know, doing what comes naturally. And so I find that discouraging. And it does, after kind of banging my head against that wall for quite a while, it's not fun. It's not fun to do. And I kind of feel like I think that's why prose is appealing to me right now a little bit, because I just read a really great book. This is a long-winded answer, but I read a really great book called it's The Stag's Blood Prince, and the author's name is Gideon something. And I actually found out after I finished reading it, I think it might be his first novel, which is astounding because it's so good. But that is a Game of Thrones-esque in scope and in intensity story with heavy queer representation. It doesn't do homophobia as a theme in it. It has racism, but it has a racism of a different it's allegorical. There's a different flavor going on. But it doesn't, it's basically just, it's a Game of Thrones type thing with totally queer things that you can read as a queer person. And it's got some explicit stuff in it because that's kind of how Game of Thrones would do it. And it just succeeds so well. And it doesn't pull its punches. It's not trying to be cute. It's not trying to represent necessarily role models or people that you'd want to be like. There's lots of mistakes. There's lots of bad behavior. But it's just real. It just felt very good and very, very natural queer representation. So that, I think, it's easier to do that when there's no images. And that's, I wish it wasn't that way.
Yeah.
But especially in this country, I'm sure it's different elsewhere. In other
countries, for better or for worse, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, there are places in other countries where this is not even an issue, and then there are other countries, even some that you would not expect, that are heavily censored. And I'm sure you have dealt with Northwest Press distribution. issues to certain countries, and finding
Not
out that
really.
that's good.
I've been, well, the only thing that we ever ran into in that vein was printing. I know a lot of people will publish their books in China for the price break, because it's an enormous price savings. And if you can plan it out ahead of time, I guess you can have the book shipped to you at pretty low cost. And if you're an indie and you don't have the money to spend on printing, it can be a way to save money, I guess. But I never printed the books in China because I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel comfortable with it. I didn't like the government's attitude toward queer folks and free expression, and I just felt like it was a bad idea. I did look into it once. I got some quotes from a company that said, "Oh, we're this broker. We work with this printer, and they're based in China." And I got a quote from them, and they gave me a competitive quote, and I was going to try it. And then they said, "Well, we have to send the book to the Chinese government first, and they'll let us know if it's allowed to be printed at our mainland printers." And I just said, I'm done. I don't want that. This is not. I print with a printer in Quebec called Marquis, and I printed with them pretty much from the beginning. And they don't ask to submit the book to Canadian censors. They don't ask.
Do they even have Canadian censors?
I don't know.
I feel like they probably.
I don't know if they do or not, but I've never. They understand that I'm doing that I'm printing art books, and I'm printing books that are works of art, that are creative works. They don't care about what's in them, and we've printed like Godzilla and King Kong having an orgy in the middle of Tokyo. Like so not really. It was like Bing Bong and Fraudzilla, whatever. That's been the only time that I've run into that kind of a roadblock.
Yeah.
But distribution has been great. Like, because most places like Diamond is smart enough to know that they can just say this is an adult title, and that stores can make their own decisions about whether they want to stock an adult title. Like, why is that so hard of a concept for people to understand? I don't get it.
It should have been something that they ironed out years ago when obscenity first came up, and you had like Frank Zappa sitting there talking to what was it, Tipper Gore and all that nonsense. like at that point in the 80s, maybe somebody smart should have like figured out at least some framework. It doesn't have to be like the because there's all these different definitions. Who knows what obscenity is until you see it, yada yada. But at least a framework so you could then apply that, to other industries. But
I actually have been with Apple. I was very excited about when the iPad came out. I was very excited about the idea of distribution directly to readers through the iPad as a way to read comics. And that ended up being kind of a problem. Like, in the beginning, you would sell books through the App Store. There was no bookstore, but you would sell books as apps, or you would do whatever. And there was just case after case after case of their, content review board being very, very upset by a hint of the curve of someone's ass crack above a towel, whereas they could have someone having their balls electrocuted, and that's fine. So I wrote about that extensively back in the day because I wanted to keep the pressure on. I wrote about it again when Apple wouldn't distribute Hard to Swallow as an Apple book, or they wouldn't stock it in their store. The thing is that they're distributing, and they're also getting a cut of sales. Also getting that one. They're kind of like a store, but they're kind of like a distributor, and that's a big market to have. Suddenly say, well, no, you can't even have your book available to anybody. Nobody can decide that they do want adult material, please. So that's a challenge. I don't know that we've solved it yet. I think Kickstarter is a great way to bypass all of that malarkey, in the words of our commander in chief, and bypass all that and just reach your audiences directly. You have to learn a lot more skills. Like you have to learn how to, put your book together and work with the printer and get it out and ship it, and have to lick a lot of stamps or print a lot of labels. But you can do it. Nobody can get in your way if you're doing it yourself.
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to the whole zine mentality of old, when you literally would do all of that yourself, even if it was you not printing or going to a printer, but rather printing your own stuff. And I mean, it's there are many ways to do it, and I'm glad our industry has like figured out these workarounds and these things, but it's still challenging because in some weird ways, like deplatforming is deplatforming, whether it's somebody who you think deserves it, like Trump, or it's someone who doesn't deserve it, like,
Well, I mean, but then again, I mean, there's if I was going to print a comic that said we should all go get that guy and I'll give him his name and address, like deplatform me for that.
Totally right, for that. Yeah.
But like not because there's a penis. Like grow up. Come on.
Yeah. Actionable harm, vice, actionable lust. I don't even know. Right. It's such a double standard. And I mean, this is a whole other thing, right? But clearly there's a lot to work on in that industry so that we can have a better functional system.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we have workarounds, and I think Kickstarter is a great thing. And I think you having your own publisher like Northwest Press, it gives you a voice, it gives you a seat at the table to the world through these other distribution channels to really make sure that good queer or allied or whoever good stories have a home. And I feel like Northwest Press at its minimum is that a really great home for some amazing content and stories. And you deserve all, or at least 99% of the credit to providing that home to our friends like Dave and Justin and Dave Abersole, Dave Davenport, and everyone else. We had John Macy, everyone we've talked about. Like, I want you and I want our listeners and viewers to understand that you have played a huge part in the last decade of queer comics, and you deserve that credit and recognition. And I'm hopefully saying the obvious, but I want to make sure I say it anyway.
That's really sweet. I really appreciate that. It's been, I've basically been doing this for almost 20 years. More, actually, probably 20 years period, because I think the first queer kind of comics thing I worked on was Out in Comics. And the first issue that I didn't work on was 2000. And 2001, Comic-Con San Diego, Andy Mangel's Out in Comics, that was the first one I designed, I think. So that's 20 years ago next month.
Oh my gosh.
So, if you want to see success, look at me.
No,
I can teach you how to have a whole lot of fun and make a whole lot of friends and feel really good about yourself. But you still have to have a day job. But other than that, it's wonderful.
You got to keep the day job. That's it's a good lesson for a lot of people when they're creating art. Don't get rid of the day job just yet.
Hold off until you can't hold on to the day job anymore. Like once it gets crowded out.
Well, Zan, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to us. I really appreciate you. And you're a local treasure to me now, whereas before you were just a treasure from afar. I am excited to help you with any and everything you decide to do for this little dream of a local social show.
Let's do it.
I have a lot of friends that I would love to invite up here specifically for such a thing, and some drag queens who are near and dear to me, at least from Media Meltdown, or drag performers, I should say, who I think would really get a kick out of it. So I hope that comes to fruition. And again, as always, Northwest Press has always had an open door on this show. Dave, mostly Dave, has Aerosol has taken advantage or rather been a part of it. But any and all future Northwest Press, I always hope that you give us a heads up and we can announce any projects.
I'm going to have to be an indoor kid for a little bit and spend some time doing some writing and editing. But when there's something to share, I will be very, very happy to come and share it with you. Maybe share it with you first. Have the exclusive.
Ooh, I love exclusives. And next time we do this, it will be in person, whether it's at your place or mine. I don't care, because I now know where you live, and we are like 10 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
So we will have to do this in
Definitely.
person for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, and I really appreciate you being here. And as always, we have to say it, please be safe, even though the pandemic is over for 99% of the world, or rather the US, let's say. You still want to be careful, so please be safe, and I look forward to seeing you IRL real soon.
Yeah, and I'll say this, I don't really have anything necessarily to plug at this very moment, aside from the Pride postcards, but if you're a queer person and you're doing comics, and you want to talk about it, and you want to, do an interview with somebody, think about what your interview is about. Like, I'm going to do an interview with Dave Ebersole, we talked about, and our interview is going to be about writing comics when you also write in other media, because he's also a playwright. So it's going to be about how those things are different, and how you learn from one or the other. So if you're doing work and you have some interesting story to tell about the way you work, or the kind of work that you're doing, or the stories you're telling, pitch it to me as an idea. Let's do an interview. We'll get people listening to you.
Yeah, no, right down here, northwestpress.com series, the INQ podcast. Please go check out all the new stuff coming out of there. I'm really excited you're doing this again. I love it, and I want more of it.
You got it.
All right, thanks, Zan. It was good seeing you. Bye, everyone. Oh, wait, there's more. I got to pay the bills. How did I forget? So real quick, and this is totally gratuitous, and you probably already moved on. If you have not, Flame On did just release their new Patreon levels. There's some good stuff here. I'm just going to say my favorite is the names of the levels are amazing. I'll let you go to the link, patreon.com/FlameOnShow. But there are physical goods like enamel pins and postcards. Speaking of postcards, that I am really excited about seeing realized in the world. So if you're interested, please go to patreon.com/FlameOnShow. Go check them out. It is they're very affordable, and I am really excited to get some more swag out in the world. So when you do this, it makes it all possible, and we'll get to share it with everyone, including Zan. Zan will get a freebie, I think, at some point. But anyway, thanks again. I appreciate it, and we'll see you guys very soon. Actually, maybe even next week for another Rainbow Spotlight.
Exciting.